Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for what is my last live of 2021. I think I put a number of posts talking about how this is going to be my last live and how I'm going to take a break and then I'll be back in January. I have been very, very excited about this live because I had a very, very special guest lined up for today. She was she was Ramya Devilapalli, who is actually a warrior. If I struggle for words to describe this amazing human being that she is, because I still believe she's with us in spirit, she has been managing a chronic illness from her childhood. She has had many allied secondary medical conditions like a failing kidney, uh, diabetes. She was on a very regimented diet. She was an amputee and she was medically blind. But this woman, she knew how to live. She lived, she seized each moment and she lived each moment. And from October, I was so excited about ending my lives with a conversation with her because I thought we've been going, all of us, we've been the whole world, we've been going through a very turbulent 2 years, and it doesn't look as if it's getting any better. It really looks as if we are going to enter 2022 on a wing and a prayer, just hoping with a lot of hope. And I thought somebody like Ramya would be a fantastic resource to talk to us about what does it really mean to live with hope. When the odds are stacked against you, when you cannot even get out of bed on certain days, how are you so hopeful and how do you thrive? But unfortunately, Ramya is not with us. I mean, she's not with us physically, she's with us in spirit. It's a huge blow to those of us who have known her. And my initial inclination was to cancel this live because I was just very gutted. But then I realized that somebody as special as Ramya had to be celebrated. And that was the reason I said, okay, let me go ahead with this life. And the person who came automatically to my mind was another very compassionate, somebody who's again a phenomenal person. It's Gayatri Ram Gopal. Gayatri Abraham, me, Gayatri
Man,
Ram
Ram
Gopal.
Gopal, whatever.
Ram Gopal. It's Gayatri. And Gayatri is a mental health professional. She's a counselor. She's a founder of Padme Foundation, which is a nonprofit go-to resource in the adoption space. But more than all the work she does, Gayatri is an incredibly compassionate person who lives with empathy and compassion, and she offers unstinting support to people. For some strange reason, that day as I was grieving, Gayatri popped to my mind, and I called her a bawling, and I said, Gayatri, this is what happened. And, she held space for me with compassion. And then she said she was very honored to come on and do this conversation with me. So, welcome, Gayatri. Thank you very much for joining me. And can I please invite you to share a little bit more about yourself with the people who are listening?
Thank you, Rekha, for giving me this opportunity. I thought at the end of 2021, as you said, it seems like it's not ending, right? The turbulence and the
Yeah,
adversities that many families and many communities are going through. I think it's
yeah,
going to continue to some
yeah,
extent in the following year. And I thought this was something that I wanted to do, not just because of that, but the way you described Ramya to me. I
yeah,
could just, imagine. I've not seen her at all. But just that
yeah,
description of this never-ending spirit and,
yeah,
seeing joy and life in everything that she does or she did,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
really pulled closer to this subject of hope that you were talking
Yeah.
about. And I'm thank you so much for bringing me in. Yes, I was a homemaker for many years. I had a stint for the first 10 to 12 years in the area of sales and marketing and public relations, and then I completely took time off to be with my girls, right? And my resources were limited, and that's what I wanted to do. And There was no point in trying to juggle too many things. I really didn't have the bandwidth to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And while they started growing up, I realized now it's time for me to, kind of align my personal goals, my work goals along with my personal goals, right? And that's how Padme started. That's how,
Yeah.
Padme Foundation had started. So that's in a nutshell uh, uh, where I started. It's my second stint in the last 5 years. I've come back um, with, of course, a lot of roadblocks, upheavals um, to even get here. So I'm so happy to talk about this subject, hope,
Yeah,
because
Gayatri. Sorry, go on.
yeah. So I do remember, Rekha, that you and I met many years ago, right? And that's when
Yes,
my
we did.
journey actually, it kind of started, seeding hope.
Yeah,
And and thank you for that, and thank you to Pearl.
yeah, absolutely. Gayatri, when I mean, after we decided that we were going to do this live, and then I was reflecting upon it, I thought about you as a person, I thought about your journey, and I realized that what really gave you what really grounded you in this topic and made you the best resource I could think of for this topic was the fact that you have walked this path. You have walked that path of living with hope and thriving in your way. And for me, that living wisdom from having walked the path is so much more valuable than anything you can read about hope or anything that you can read about compassion. It's really, we have a lot of knowledge. We don't have enough conversations about how to use that knowledge in our everyday life and how to really make a difference in our everyday life. So, what I would like for us to do is to really start from the very beginning. I know this is a conversation about hope, but it's also as much about thriving, right? And I would like to know, how do you interpret the word thrive? I'm asking you as Gayatri, the person, and Gayatri, who is a mental health professional. You're playing a couple of roles here. So tell me, how do you interpret the word thrive? And when, according to you, is a person thriving?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, right? I mean, in the sense that for me, I think I would say living fully in the
Mm-hmm.
range of emotions, the joys, the turbulence, the sadness, the disappointment, happiness, our fears, frustrations, and feeling the feel in our everyday lives is for me thriving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when you look at thriving from of course, the definition of thriving is also comes in from the aspect of success or flourishing, right? In a way that it cannot be quantified. I mean, it can be quantified.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
And also the definition of success is very subjective.
it is.
Now, of course, thriving is a response to basic needs of survival, right?
Mm, mm,
But to me, I think living your life fully is self actualization, right?
mm-hmm,
Harnessing your potential, looking inwards, right?
mm-hmm.
Bringing it to your awareness because there are some blind spots we don't know. How
Yeah,
do you do it? Bringing
yeah,
all of that into our
mm-hmm,
awareness, okay?
mm-hmm.
Despite and also acknowledging the limitations along with that, right?
Yeah,
And then experience it to drive all the creative abilities that you may have. And
yeah,
I mean, that's what I tried doing, and that's what I tried doing, and I
yeah.
probably have not fully actualized, but it's a journey, it's work in progress.
I find it very interesting that you actually talk about thriving and experiencing the entire spectrum of emotions that come up in our everyday lives, the positive and the negative, because a lot of people tend to think of thriving purely in the context of positive experiences, be it
Yes,
emotional, be it material, right? And
yes,
I'm very intrigued that you're talking about making space for the not so positive, because it is a part of our life. We can't repress it. It is there. And can I invite you to like share a little bit more about how does the the emotions we run away from, the painful emotions, the ones that tend to weigh us down. How does that contribute to our thriving?
Um, to me, I think, I mean, I can look at it from my perspective, and I would say that for me, sitting in the dark is where I saw light. And I was
Mm,
comfortable to sit in the dark.
mm,
And the dark
mm,
days would be for months, some days, okay, but
yeah.
I was quite comfortable sitting in the dark. But
Mm,
it's not easy for
yeah.
everyone. And it was
Yeah.
not easy for me as well in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yes.
not something that came to me naturally to confront the darkness within, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
sit with it, to confront
Mm-hmm.
all the fears and the vulnerabilities and, the future and, the past and, all of that can be
Mm.
like quite a lot to handle, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
but for me, I think uh, in the dark is where I found the light.
Yeah. That resonates very deeply with me because that was my journey as well. And what I learned by sitting with the dark, it, like you said, it was not easy at all. And I had to incrementally push forward in being comfortable, say, with my pain. What we talk about dark here is not, negative. It
No,
is
it's
the
not.
pain. It's not
It's
negative. I
negative.
want to set that context here because a lot of
Yes,
times we
please,
take
please. The
dark
dark is
as
not some negative
it,
forces or
yeah,
anything.
or it is
Yeah.
not. It is really our pain that we haven't felt fully or addressed. It's really the shame we haven't dealt with. It's not the guilt. It's all of that. It's a trauma that we haven't looked at, which we have carried for years, and which has compounded over time. Which it's the heaviness, it's the burden that we have carried, and in not experiencing it fully, what I learned was I was also not experiencing the good things. Like when good things
Yes.
happened, because I was shutting down my full experience of pain, I was also not experiencing the good things. And I really like that you bring in this aspect into our conversation about thriving, because thriving really is about the full experience, isn't it?
It's the full experience of life,
Yeah,
and the of course the defense mechanism or the coping mechanism is to shut down, right?
yeah,
To not to look at the pain, not to confront it,
yeah,
and it eats you. It comes back, at you in ways that you wouldn't imagine. I mean, it happened to me. So
yeah.
um, I guess that, as I said, like I completely agree with you. This full range of emotions, sitting with those emotions, to feel the pain is when you feel the joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think the interesting thing is when you feel the heaviness, you feel the darkness, and you know that it is suffocating, you also know you don't want it. That also gives
Yes.
you the contrast of knowing what do you want in your life. It helps you to identify when are you
Yeah.
thriving, right? For me, that's a very significant part of the reconstruction of my life, as I call it, has been in identifying that I don't want to feel this. I have a choice here. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to sit with this, but now I'm going to make a different choice here. And it's making those different choices with intention, which really helps you pivot your
Yes.
relationship with your own self, isn't it?
Yes. And in a sense that we all, I mean, you have a choice to make here. Either, yeah, you
Yeah,
sat in the dark hole and in that pain. Now, what do you
yeah,
want to do with it? Okay,
absolutely.
how are you going to navigate that? How are you going to
Yeah,
start coming out of that, dark hole,
yeah,
climbing out, taking those
yeah,
baby steps, you know
yeah,
and it's scary
yeah.
to be in that
But you,
space.
But the good thing also was, Gayatri, that when I started that journey, I also realized that I'd acquired a number of habits and behaviors, which were coping behaviors, which made me feel worse about myself, which actually added to the weight of the darkness. Like say
Hmm.
like there are those of us who have a bad relationship with food, or we have a bad relationship, we have codependency in our relationships. And
Yes.
it is when we start dealing with, at least for me, when I started dealing with the roots, so I went to the roots and I started dealing with it, that's when I could start slowly looking at those behaviors and saying, I don't need this. This doesn't this is I understand the cycle and the pattern, and I can really do better than this.
Yes, and you know that breaking that pattern and is not an easy one, right? I mean, because
So
that's again the comfort zone that you're in, right? And now you
yeah,
got to step away from that comfort zone
yeah,
and then look at it as it is, and then what do
yeah,
you want to do with it, right? Do
yeah.
you want to be stuck in those patterns, or do you want to, you know, do something about breaking those patterns of
Absolutely.
dependency?
Absolutely. And also feeling new feelings, right? Like, like
Feel,
I'm just going to give an example. Like for me, for the longest ever, I wasn't very good at taking care of myself. And as I started changing as I started navigating through the darkness and I started lightening up, I also noticed that I wanted to take care of myself better. But there still was time, there was still a time lapse between wanting to take care of myself and actually doing it. And I would, even something as simple as cooking myself a healthy meal, it took me a little bit of time to actually begin to appreciate that nurture and nourishment that I was offering to myself, because it was so alien. But once I started doing it and once I started allowing myself to feel nurtured by my own actions, then it started to build up. And that's when I think I really started realizing, oh, this is nice. I feel good about myself. And I think for me, that's a very essential aspect of thriving as well, isn't it? What do you
yes,
think?
it is. It is because you have to. So here's the thing about thriving, right? It's not an external thing.
Yeah.
It's within us, right?
Yes.
It
Yes.
is something within us, and we need to harness it. It's not external. It's completely
Absolutely.
within our scope and our
Yeah.
ability to bring it to our awareness, and
Yeah.
then with that comes hope.
Yes. So, how does hope help us thrive? Tell us that now that you've introduced hope into the whole equation.
Yeah, so of course, hope is undoubtedly a very personal experience, right? One can't really define it again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some see it as a function of struggle,
Mm.
while there are different approaches that have like one of the approaches is to conceptualize hope in the realm of being, okay,
Mm.
which is acknowledging someone during illness or palliative care, or so that's just in the state of being, right?
Mm.
Hope in the being. And Snyder, an American psychologist, he emphasized the relevance of hope in the context of taking action,
Mm.
okay, of doing. So there is the context of being, and then there is a context of doing
Mm.
something which is actionable, right? And
Yeah.
that is the capacity which is
Mm-hmm.
within us, which we
Mm-hmm.
have to deep dive
Mm-hmm.
within us and then
Mm-hmm.
bring it to our awareness and then
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
establishing goals thereafter.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain that? Can I ask you to explain that a little bit more? And I'll tell you the reason why I'm very curious about hope as an actionable, as something actionable, is because a lot of times when people are very hopeful, right, it's also being perceived as wishful thinking sometimes. So there are
Yes,
these
it
very
is. It
fine, there
is.
are these very, it's very interchangeable, it's very
Yeah, yeah.
interchangeably used. But hope is positive, right? I mean, that's how we tend to look at it. But how does hope really help if it isn't tangible, if it isn't contributing in action, or
Yes,
in being, like you said, the being and the action? Can you explain a little bit more and help us
yes.
understand this better?
Yes. So this is a topic, like I said, I kind of deep dived into it because, there was a time when it was all about, surviving for me, really not
Mm-hmm.
living, right? It was more
Mm-hmm.
about surviving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when there is this, when it comes as a positive, when it was coming at me as a positive element to
Mm.
manifest within,
Mm.
I pushed it away. I did not acknowledge it. Okay. And
Mm.
I did a lot of research on what was it that was making me averse to,
Be hopeful.
look at hope.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Parallelly, I was actually beginning to thrive, but I did not understand where the link is, right?
Mm.
I realized then after a lot of research that hope is not an emotion or a feeling.
Mm.
To me, I thought it was an emotion or a feeling, and where I'm not feeling it. What is this
Yeah,
hope? Right? I
yeah,
mean, I'm getting it, right?
yeah.
And then came this research that says that hope is actually a cognitive process. It's a thinking
Okay.
process. Of course, emotion plays a very, very integral and a supporting role. Okay.
Okay.
But as, of course, Charles Richard Snyder, he says that there is a trilogy, right? I mean, he talks about goals, pathways, and agency
Mm.
to and to put it very simply,
Yeah.
as what Brené Brown would say, in that one is having those, like, what happens when we have the ability to set certain realistic goals for us.
Mm. Okay.
Okay, I know where I want to go, but I
Mm.
want to be realist. Yet I want to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I figure to achieve these goals,
Mm.
and to stay flexible?
Mm.
Pathways will change. How
Mm.
adaptable can you be? And
Mm.
also tolerate disappointment along the way.
Mm.
Okay. So
Mm.
finding alternative routes, pathways, and the ability to say, okay, this is a closed door now.
Mm.
There is a roadblock here.
Mm.
Now, what do I do here? How do
Mm.
I move against the tide?
Yeah.
Right? And then that kind of, for me, I think, was very important. And what was the that kind of loops in the thread is that you need to believe in oneself. You have to believe in us. I mean,
Mm.
I can do this.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
those are the three integral components of hope. So if you look at it, it's quite realist. I mean, it's a cognitive process,
Okay, so
right?
let me just, because this is very new for me now. Okay, I like you mentioned, I thought about hope as something I felt, and I actually struggled with it because I didn't really know what hope feels like. I used to think, okay, maybe when I'm happy, I'm hopeful, or maybe when something happens, you get that good feeling that something is about to happen.
Yeah,
You're going to
yeah,
snag
yeah,
that deal, or I'm hopeful, right?
yeah, yeah.
But for you to actually say this is a cognitive process, which involves goals, which involves pathways, which involves agency, where I have to make space for excitement and adventure and risk taking as much as I do for things not going my way, and still believing in myself, in my ability to say bounce back or do more. This is very, very new for me. So I think you've actually given us a very new perspective on hope. And I have to say this now that you explain it in this way. When I think about the person Ramya was and everything she did, this makes so much more sense. Because I think throughout this week, I've been thinking, how did this girl do it? Like, just how? How would you, where did that come from? What did it feel like? I've been very curious, and I think I'm getting a little, some of the answers here. But I
Yeah,
want
and
to,
the other thing also, Rekha, to just add to what I because I really did a lot of research on this, because
mm,
you know I I felt that this positive psychology was not sitting well with me at all in for many years. Okay, I mean, I was just running away from it. I had enough of it, right?
yeah.
The- I also realized people with highest hopefulness,
Hmm.
okay, have the knowledge that they can move through adversity.
That's such a great point you make.
Yeah, and this was something that I came upon in the works of Brené Brown, which she's done a lot of work on
Hmm.
pain and trauma. And she
Hmm.
says, it's very interesting. She says the capacity to hope intelligently and
Hmm.
actively, okay,
Hmm.
is an
Hmm.
essential component in times of adversity.
Hmm. This is
And in many ways, that's what I was doing, and that's what many people do, right?
hmm.
But we
Hmm.
associate hope to this thing which is a feeling.
Yeah, I really like the fact that you've bought in resilience now. You bought adversity now. And because a lot of times when things go wrong, we tell people very mindlessly, keep the faith. be hopeful. And there isn't really much, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
You know,
and
there
I'll give
are,
you some examples of hope, right?
please, please,
What
please.
so because this really got me to thinking, and I did some, as I said, I was like, I research a lot, okay? Because I do find it difficult to put to understand myself. So
Mm-hmm,
my journey has been a
mm-hmm,
lot of exploration, reading, uh, mindfulness practice,
mm-hmm,
yoga,
mm-hmm,
a lot of the things that have helped me to kind of assimilate what I was going through and then kind of connect it, because what I was missing in my
mm-hmm.
journey, I couldn't connect the dots.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't, and I was, struggling with that, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then, okay, this was interesting. So there are four kinds of hope. Okay, I'll give you
Okay,
examples of hope. So there
okay.
is a realistic hope. Okay,
Mm.
this is a realistic hope is a hope for an outcome that is
Mm-hmm.
reasonable and is probable.
Okay.
Okay, like say someone is having pain. Okay, a
Mm.
chronic pain. Now you
Yeah.
can mitigate it
Mm.
and reduce the pain, but
Yeah.
not completely eradicating the pain.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm.
so it allows us to observe,
Mm.
okay, and understand the situation
Mm.
and maintaining that openness to, to
Mm.
life.
Mm.
Okay, that is realistic hope. Okay, then
Okay.
comes something called utopian hope. Okay, that is a collaborative, collectively, action. Okay, an
Mm.
action which
Mm.
is taken by a
Mm.
group of people or a single individual. Okay, it could
Mm.
be an activist, say for a better future.
Mm.
Consider, utopian hope in terms of climate movement.
Mm. Or the
Okay.
vision that your nonprofit and my nonprofit has for a better world.
Okay, you could do that too. Okay. Then there's
Yeah.
something called chosen hope. Okay. Now
Okay.
this hope helps us to live with the difficult present. So you could be in a very difficult situation
Mm.
where the future is uncertain.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
So, in addition to the physical suffering, right? I mean, we have
Yeah.
a diagnosis of serious or terminal illness. Okay.
Mm. Mm.
The major contributor to distress and depression and hopelessness,
Mm.
right? And so there's
Mm.
the triple effect, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's understandable because multiple factors such as grief, fear, concerns about your loved one
Yeah.
can contribute to the experiences of the whole unit feeling that hopelessness.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that's the last one, which is the transcendent hope or the
Okay.
existential hope. Okay,
Okay.
now that's a hope that describes a stance of general hopefulness, okay, to no specific outcome or goal. So it's just hoping that something good can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like you keep your fingers crossed and hope everything things work out, but you have no idea how it's going to happen or what you're doing about it. But
Yeah, so
you
under
just,
that component is this universal hope, which is very interesting, okay, which
hmm,
says that, okay, it's a defense mechanism for us
hmm,
uh, as when we are in despair or when we are facing
hmm,
some adversity,
hmm,
then it's a general belief about the
yeah,
future. That's the
yeah,
universal hope, right? So
yeah,
I just wanted to lay this in context because it helped me to kind of rationalize
hmm,
and understand how to begin my journey.
yeah. I think this is very useful because what is also coming across is, although we use the word hope, it's not, it doesn't, it's not a solid contain, it's not like a label, that it's not a box, it's not a
You
homogeneous
can't
box.
hold it in a container.
It is not containable in a single uniform
Yeah,
container. There are
yeah.
shades to it. It's actually like a shade card
It's a
for
shame.
various situations, and at different times you possibly are feeling different kinds of hope at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
it
So
is. I mean, I agree with you because you can't, because different situations demands the way you
yeah,
look at hope differently,
yeah,
right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Uh, yeah. So it's important to remember that.
absolutely. So tell me, why is hope important for us? I mean, this may seem as a very simplistic question because, we all know we need hope. We all know we have to live with hope. But I
Yeah.
haven't heard many of us actually sit down and say, why is it important? What does it bring to our lives and, to merit the pedestal?
Yeah, so for me, I think, okay, just look at it this way. It's our for our survival, right? I mean,
Mm,
to meet our physical, emotional needs. It's very basic. We're
mm,
human and we're made to survive in a natural world. Okay.
mm,
But yet, when an individual faces adversities, this is not
mm.
easy to wake up every day, as you mentioned in the beginning, to
Yeah,
feel happy and joyful.
yeah.
And what do you do then, right? How do you manifest it in your life, in your daily life? I mean,
Mm,
simply realizing that tomorrow is another day.
mm, mm.
Okay, let there be new beginnings. Okay, and there are days that you may not want to pursue anything, and that's absolutely fine. And there are some days when you want to wake up and set some goals for yourself, right?
Yeah,
And I said, as I mentioned again, acknowledging the roadblocks is important.
yeah,
Validating your experience is useful tool when
yeah.
you're in these situations, and then slowly climbing it out.
Yeah. I think also, as you speak, something that comes to me also is because, I deal with anxiety. I know there have been times in my life when I had PTSD and I've had depression. And I think for me, because I'm inherently someone who's hopeful, even when I have that universal hope at all times, and then I have all the other hopes. But,
Now that you
but
know about a lot of things on hope, right?
yeah, yeah. So like something that what I have learned is because I'm very hopeful, even on my worst days, like even on days when I'm really down and out, scraping the bottom of the barrel, I cannot even, it's just like I feel miserable. I learn to appreciate the smallest things. It may be something as beautiful as my cat came and sat on me and purred. And there's that moment of love, and I grab it like a greedy child in a candy store. And I
That's
think,
like your gratitude, no? It's just that gratitude of having that cat. I mean, on
you
and
know, but
and then
but you don't
and
see it. Like, I mean, you can
you
have
don't see
gratitude.
it.
See, I
Yes, you don't
experience
see.
gratitude. I experience
Yeah,
gratitude.
yeah,
But then because I believe inherently that something good is going to happen any which way, when that's, you start clutching at straws, you
yeah.
know?
You do. Why? Rekha, it's amazing that you're able to do it and you're able to clutch and grasp. It also has its own pitfalls, right? And let me tell you about hope. I mean, where it one needs to be mindful, right?
Hmm.
When an individual does not have a solid support network,
Hmm.
okay, it's
Hmm.
not easy for that person to imagine better possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay, when there are social, cultural, economic barriers, okay,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
systemic barriers within the family system or in the organization or outside of the
Yeah.
community, then
Yeah.
it's not easy to do
No.
that, right? And when individuals are trying repeatedly to change and then there is a roadblock and there is a failure at every turn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then it's very important, at least in the mental health space, we have to be very mindful that we do not raise a client's hope or an individual's hope when the desired outcome is unlikely
Hmm.
to happen.
Gayatri, it's very interesting you raise this because for me, I think for the largest part of my life, I'm an introvert, and I've not had a very deep network or a support, like an immediate support group. I've had like all those roadblocks that you've spoken about, each and every one of them I've gone through in my life. Because my journey. I think most of the listeners now know my journey. It's almost sounding like a stuck gramophone record, but I I did grow up in a in a family which is marked by domestic violence. I have been in relationships where I've experienced extreme intimate partner abuse, even to a point where I almost lost my life once, almost, but I pulled back. There's been a lot of I've actually started my life over many times, many times, and interestingly for me, in the absence of deep support, like that even now, it's only now I've actually started learning to ask people for help, because I've gone through most part of my life not asking people for help because there weren't people to ask for help. But I think the one thing that got me through each and every hurdle was this universal hope.
Hang on to it. That's what. So, Rekha,
Yes,
here's the thing, right? The four different hopes that we were talking about, right?
yes,
It
absolutely.
it plays its part when it needs to play its part, right?
Hmm.
Having said that,
Hmm.
also it's important to have hope from a
Yeah,
it's all a cognitive process. Even if you're looking at
yeah,
the other examples,
yeah,
it's a cognitive process. It could be
yeah,
rationalization, it could be a defense mechanism, it could be whatever it could be, right?
yeah.
uh, the other important factor also, I mean, thank you for sharing your journey, in and of course, your vulnerabilities. I mean, you've spoken to me many times about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, Acceptance is
Yes,
equally important.
yeah,
Okay. And acceptance does not mean by any stretch of imagination I'm saying that passive resignation or passive not trying, or you
yeah,
just letting it pass or procrastinate. No, it's not
yes,
that. I'm not talking
yes,
about that, right?
yeah,
It takes a huge amount of fortitude and motivation to accept what it is and what the
yeah,
reality is, right,
yeah,
for you.
yeah, yes.
And you're doing your best in the best circumstances that you've been
Hmm.
put,
Yeah.
okay? Whatever
Hmm.
resources that you find within, right,
Yeah.
at your disposal, whether it's inner or which is
Hmm.
outer,
Hmm.
it's important to recognize that, to mitigate, to heal, and redirect your life and change the course for yourself. And do
Absolutely.
what can be changed,
Yeah. Yeah.
accept what that cannot be changed.
The serenity prayer, and
The
have the
same.
wisdom to know the difference between the two.
Yes.
So, Gayatri, I mean, I think we're doing a lot of unpacking of hope over here in very tangible terms, in very tangible, in a very tangible way. And I'm really enjoying this conversation. But as you pointed out, hope that there is, for me also, I think there's a flip side to hope. And the reason for me was, in my experience, my hope would often go to wishful thinking. Like I would, it was also, as much as it was a coping mechanism, it also became an escape mechanism at times, because I would just allow myself to drift off into a daydream, thinking of a better future, which had no foundations in terms of goals or pathways or agency, as I now recognize. So for me, I'm very aware that I have to be very mindful about my hoping. It has to work for me. And that means I should also be aware of the flip side of hope. So according to you, what is the flip side of hope? What is the downside of uh, being hopeful, or being, holding on to hope as if it's the holy grail?
Yeah, as I said, right, Rekha, I hear you. I mean, it's important to be realistic about it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and acceptance along with it. Okay, it's something. It's a felt thing. Okay,
Mm,
you would know it within you. Okay, uh, just the ability to recognize it, right?
mm,
That this is something which is probably beyond my reach.
mm,
Okay.
mm,
Is there some way that I can bring about some peace and acceptance to that?
mm,
Okay.
mm.
Also, there could be sometimes that you're so much in that myopic way of putting your plans
Yeah.
and realistic goals
Yeah.
that when there is a roadblock, you're actually not seeing another tunnel or a pathway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, because this is what you want,
Yeah.
but there could be another opportunity that is knocking on the door, which
Hmm.
you've not let yourself
Yeah.
walk that
Yeah.
path,
Yeah.
either because of your own, not recognizing it at all, at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, probably it's not
Yeah.
even come to your conscious level for you to even see there is a path out there.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is also very appropriate for people who are in toxic relationships or toxic situations. I'm not talking about toxic relationships in an
Yeah.
intimate partner context. It's even at work or even in a friendship or, in any relationship, people stay on hoping. And that's actually like sitting with a bonfire in your lap and hoping you won't get burnt when you are burning up.
Yeah, which is almost like optimism, right? Because optimism is important, but optimism is also, it's it because the optimists accept that life will just work out well at the end.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
mm, yeah.
uh,
Everything has a reason and a purpose.
and the wishful thinking, right? So,
And the visual thinking.
so
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the hope that I researched and found out in terms of the realistic hope, or the utopian hope, or the universal hope, or even the I think it there is some relevance to it.
yeah,
Okay. And as I said, just be mindful in your journey. I mean, uh, not like singularly looking at a narrow path and then setting your goals, which are not doable, which is why I keep saying realistic goals, realistic goals. Look at
yeah,
your abilities, look at your potential, work on it, see what your resources are. Because resources really are an important part of achieving, or
yeah, yeah.
actualizing a certain goal or an outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You're very right about it because a lot of times when you're hoping, people don't tend to look at the resource availability or how even the dynamics between the resources for that matter.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so I completely agree with you. So just to kind of before we wind up, just a question since we've spoken so much about hope, and since we know it's a cognitive process,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
How can we build a practice of realistic hope in our everyday life so that it supports us thriving? No?
Yes. So Rekha, this is, it's not something that, I've learned it along the way. Okay.
Mm,
Um, and it's like nurturing that hope, as I said, within, and not
mm,
really looking at it outside of it, right?
mm,
We can nurture hope in very, very simple ways. Changing one's narrative,
mm,
rewriting one's life script,
mm.
and making realistic plans.
Tell me more, especially about the life script part. Please tell me more.
So you can change your life script. I mean, I've seen you do that in your own way. When I
Mm-hmm,
heard your story, you
mm-hmm.
changed your life script, right? In many ways than I can imagine.
I've just followed being very intuitive, so it hasn't been. It's not something that I've thought about.
Yes, you have the ability.
Yeah, but if supposing somebody listening to us now says, "Okay, I want to change my life script," right? Like
Okay.
say someone who is say like me who is dealing with anxiety or has been in a violent relationship or has experienced violence and is carrying the trauma of it, right? It's
Okay.
very a lot of times we don't realize even the script we are we are that's running within us. We don't even know what kind of stories we're telling ourselves. We don't know it, right?
So
How
reframe your story, reframing our
mm,
thoughts, our
mm,
negative thoughts, reframing our stories. Once you know that this pattern has not been helpful, why would
mm,
you want to sabotage your life?
mm,
That amounts to self-sabotage, right? In a
mm,
way that you're not seeing anything beyond that. I mean, you're just repeating those patterns.
yeah,
uh, so So when would you want to be in the victim space?
Hmm. Hmm. Do you
Okay.
have, I know you're not a big one for practices and tips and techniques, but then I just need to ask for somebody who is perhaps maybe about to start or
Okay,
is
there are some
is
more coming up your way where you can change your narrative. So,
tell me.
changing the narrative, practice mindfulness, Rekha.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
I would say
Hmm.
that being in the here and now, recognize opportunities. Okay, it's not something out there. Just practice mindfulness. There are so many beautiful mindfulness audio tracks available in the internet. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, just go there, get one of those, and do that every day religiously. Okay?
Hmm.
Practice it.
Hmm.
And everything is about practice. Then
Yeah.
problem solving, right? Problem
Yeah.
solving.
Hmm.
Now, what specific things can you do to either change the situation that you're in, or
Hmm.
how do you respond to that situation?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Hmm.
one thing.
Hmm.
Now, this for you to do this, you need to enable acceptance as a component,
Yeah.
because there are things in your control and there
Yeah.
are certain things which are not in your control.
Absolutely.
Okay, so refocus on what is in your control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's all you can do. Vent your fears and apprehensions and your vulnerabilities. Find that safe and confidential space where
Hmm.
vulnerability is not judged, where
Yeah.
your feelings are not minimized, where
Yeah.
your experience is not minimized.
Yeah.
Okay, whether you have the small T's or the big T's, find someone in your life where you can do this.
Yeah.
Okay, and then be surrounded by people who love you and
Hmm.
make you feel loved.
Hmm. I think those are great tips.
That's it. This is what I do.
I think we also have to work on our, like I know one thing that worked for me was because I didn't have a safe space. One of the things that really worked for me was journaling, because
Journey.
I would journal. I would obsessively journal, and it's very interesting that you talk about letting go of what you cannot control, because one of the things that I used to do was I would be in situations where people would get upset me, or situations would upset me, and people weren't doing what I wanted them to do. They were not
Yeah.
showing up for me. See, it boiled down to this: that what I cannot control is the way people are not doing what I want them to do.
Doing whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I
it
can
was
understand.
it's very difficult to
Yeah, I
control your
hear you.
response. It's very difficult to control your response to a
No,
very
you
positive,
can't.
I let you go, that it didn't happen. So one of the things I started doing was every night I would write a letter to the universe. I open my email and I write a thing saying, and sometimes I say, this happened, that person is a horrible person, this person, I would vent it out. And I think that's where my hope really came in, because I just felt very safe in a very universally protected sort of space. So I could
Protected
go out.
manner. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I could just say anything that came up. And over time, I think the third or fourth time I vented about the same person, I was like, why are you even giving this person the time of day? You have a choice. You can walk away from this. And I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, Rekha. And sometimes, it's you make your mistakes. You don't choose the right spaces to talk about it.
yeah,
I've done it, okay, and
yeah,
I've paid the price for it. And I know so many people who've done it, where you've not found your space, where you could let your fears and apprehensions out, and and then you see the judgment coming through, right? So I think, unfortunately, uh, I would say a lot of people have experienced this, So finding a safe space is very, very important,
yeah,
you know, to do that. And your thing of gratitude, right? While you just put it out in a journal, journaling is fantastic. I used to do that when I was 16, 17, for a lot of the years that I used to keep a diary and I used to journal,
Yeah.
and I do journaling even now. I continue to journal. Then
Mm.
those random acts of kindness and gratitude, right? And
Yeah.
it's not the big. It's very very difficult for a person who's again in a deep space to find gratitude, because you can't tell that person wake
Yeah.
up and smell the coffee, right? Because
You got.
you got
Yeah.
to let them be. And
Yeah.
while while it's also important to enable this in
Mm.
ourselves, right? To
Mm.
it's not about the big gratitude that we're talking about. It's just
Right.
looking at the sky and seeing the stars,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay? Having a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
okay? Having, for me, I think a hot chocolate fudge ice cream from Corner House would do the trick. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to that whenever I can. Okay. I'm just saying the small things in life, right?
Yeah. But guys, did you realize something? We've actually come a whole circle because to experience gratitude for the stars in the sky or the or sun on a gray day, just a little bit of sun on your skin on a gray day, you have to deepen your experience of.
You have to deepen your experience because you're not going to see the joy in the Corner House ice cream otherwise.
Absolutely. So I
Okay.
think
So
that I think that's the whole thing that you have to, to thrive, you have to deepen
your
your
experience
experience.
and deepening experiences is not everyone's comfort zone. It's not in anyone's comfort zone because you got to step out and look at your shadows, look at yourself, look inwards, talk to it, become friends with it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then start the journey.
I think initially, because I have to say this, like today morning, I remember I got up and I was thinking, I'm actually so grateful I have anxiety. And I'm actually so grateful. And I found myself laughing because 2 years back, if someone told me you'll actually be grateful for your anxiety, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah,
But
because you become friend to your anxiety now, so you're able to name it. You know
yeah,
what brings in that emotion,
yeah,
right? What is causing that anxiety? And it's important to label it and name it. And
yeah,
then you become friends, and then you say, yeah, 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 yeah. When it becomes overwhelming, yeah, 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 I know you're rising, right? Now chill,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
And have the
absolutely.
coping mechanisms to deal with that. And in a way, right? If you're totally not anxious in a situation, then how do you thrive and survive?
Yeah.
So there's that amount of anxiety which is which you should know that it's okay, and overwhelming anxiety when it paralyzes your life is when then you need to be watchful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, Pearl is very patient, listen to us, and she says, thank you for a meaningful discussion. Very valuable. Need to drop off now. Thank you so much for joining us, Pearl. We really, really appreciate you being with us. And I think that kind of brings us to the end of the hour. And I think we've had a really great conversation. Are there any last, nuggets of wisdom that you want to, or insights that you want to share, Gayatri, before we wind up this conversation?
Nothing at all, just a splendiferous 2022 with a hope, with some realistic goals and outcomes for all the
Mhm.
viewers and for you, Rekha. And what a wonderful conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Gayatri, for joining me. Thank you for holding space for me this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for this conversation. To everybody who's been weaving in and out, who's listening to this conversation, who will listen to this conversation in the next 24, 48 hours in the days to come, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for being a part of this journey. Like I said, this is my last live for 2021. I think I started these lives on a lark 4 months ago, and it's been an incredible journey for me. And I've met some amazing people, and I just have to say, I'm so grateful to each and every one of you who not only show up for your comments, for your inputs, for the topics that you suggest, for feedback that you give me. I've learned so much about myself doing these lives because of the way you interact and engage with me. And I we have 2 weeks to go to the end of 2021, and 2022 may start off on a what do you say, turbulent note, or an uncertain note, or a volatile note, as they call it. Uh, I really wish you all a lot of serenity, a lot of joy, a lot of reflection. And I really hope that the next few weeks will help you ground yourself in all that you want, and that you will be able to enter 2022 with hope, realistic hope, with compassion, with a lot of self-compassion, with a lot of self-love, with a lot of self-acceptance. And I hope all of you will thrive. I look forward to seeing you again in January. I will be available on my page. There will be snippets of the past conversations popping up here and now as it catches my fancy. But before we sign off, there's something that I want to do. I would like to leave you with a very beautiful song that Ramya sang. I've been listening to the song on a loop many times during this week, and I'm not very sure of the technology part of it, but I'm going to try share this so that you can listen to it as we fade out. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you very much for being a part of the journey, and I will see all of you in 2022. Okay, let me just.
Head to toe, flesh and bone, to feel whole. But the voice I'm here to use my heart and my hands. Somehow the process changed my. And there's a silent storm inside me, looking for a home. I hope that someone's gonna find me and say that I belong. I'll wait forever and a lifetime to finally get alone. And there's a silent storm inside me. Someday it will, someday it will. Ask myself, what comes next? Will I fly? Will I fall? Myself stone. I need to lose my heart.